If you're the kind of person who thinks you can handle the darkest corners of the justice system, go ahead and hit subscribe, because after this one, you might question everything you thought you knew about punishment, justice, and the human mind. Fog rolled over California's north coast like a living thing, swallowing the pine trees and the razor-wire fences of Pelican Bay State Prison. At 5:17 a.m., a trembling correctional officer radioed in a single sentence that would trigger one of the most intense investigations in the facility's history. Control, we have a man down in the SHU. The SHU, Security Housing Unit, was Pelican Bay's most feared wing, an underground labyrinth of windowless concrete cells designed to break the most violent and manipulative inmates. Men lived in near total isolation, 23 hours a day in near darkness. Rumors said you could hear the walls breathing at night. But this morning, what officers found wasn't an inmate harmed. It was one of their own. Officer Daniel Reeves lay motionless on the floor of Corridor C. His flashlight flickered beside him, its beam trembling over a smear of blood near the edge of cell 143. Reeves' skull had been fractured by a single precise blow, delivered with such force that investigators later said it was like being hit with a sledgehammer swung by someone who wasn't panicking. There was no sign of a weapon, no sign of a struggle, and most terrifying of all, no sign of how the attacker got inside one of the most secure hallways in the United States. As alarms blared, doors slammed shut, and the entire prison went into lockdown, every man inside the SHU, every murderer, gang enforcer, cartel lieutenant, and repeat violent offender, was ordered to lie face down in their cells. But cell 143 was different. Inside that concrete box lived a man known only as Adler. No first name, no documented history before 2003, no listed gang affiliations. He was a ghost in human form, one who never spoke to guards, refused all visitors, and never once violated a rule. The kind of inmate that made hardened officers uneasy. When investigators reached his cell, they expected to find him covered in Reeves' blood, maybe still clutching the unseen weapon. Instead, Adler sat cross-legged in the darkness, hands resting calmly on his knees. And he was smiling. Detective Marin Cortez arrived minutes later. She was a local legend, sharp-eyed, calculating, and known for seeing patterns where others saw chaos. As she stepped over the blood trail and into the corridor, she locked eyes with Adler through the reinforced plexiglass. "Tell me what happened," she said. Adler tilted his head, his voice soft and unsettlingly calm. "You're late." Cortez felt the air turn colder. "Late for what?" "You're here to solve a murder," he whispered. "But not his—" Before she could respond, two more officers arrived shouting, "Detective, you need to see this." Down the hallway, at the far end of Corridor C, a cell door stood slightly ajar. Impossible. In the SHU, no door opened without authorization. Some officers had worked 20 years and never seen a mechanical fault. Cortez approached cautiously, hand resting near her holster. The interior of the cell was pitch black. The lights had been disabled. Another impossibility. "Flashlight," she said. The beam cut through the darkness and revealed nothing. No inmate. Bed neatly made. No signs of forced exit. No vents large enough for escape. No way in or out except the locked door. Yet the logbook said the cell had been occupied. A man named Garrett Price, a former gang lieutenant serving a 60-year sentence. "Where is he?" an officer mumbled. Cortez scanned the floor, and there, hidden beneath the bed frame, she saw something metallic glinting. It was a key, not a prison key. Those were massive, steel, numbered. This one was small, rustic, carved with lines so intricate they looked like veins. "What the hell?" she whispered. The top of the key was engraved with 3 letters, ADR. She turned to look back at Adler's cell. He was standing now, palms pressed to glass, eyes burning with intensity that made her step back despite herself. "You've already lost," he murmured. Before Cortez could demand answers, another officer called out from the far side of the corridor, "Detective Reeves is alive." Cortez rushed to the motionless officer, her heart pounding. Paramedics were lifting him, and for the first time since she arrived, she saw his face clearly. His eyes were wide open, frozen, terrified, as if the last thing he saw before being struck was something or someone he couldn't believe. "Reeves, it's Marin Cortez," she said urgently. "Can you hear me?" "Who did this?" Reeves's lips twitched. A faint rasp escaped. "Not him." Cortez leaned closer. "What do you mean, not him? Who wasn't it?" He blinked slowly, pupils shaking. "Not Adler, not the one in the cell." "What cell?" "Reeves, focus." His breath caught in his throat, and in a final whisper, he forced out two words that froze the entire hallway. "Wrong man." Paramedics rushed him away. Cortez stood, trying to piece together the impossible. An officer attacked in a place where no inmate should be able to reach him. A cell that opened itself. A missing prisoner. A mysterious key engraved with Adler's initials. And a dying officer whispering that the man everyone suspected wasn't the one responsible. When she returned to Adler's cell, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then went out completely. Emergency power kicked on 3 seconds later. And in those 3 seconds, cell 143 became empty. Adler was gone. No sound. No door opening. No alarm. Just gone. Cortez felt a chill crawl down her spine. There was no way out of that cell. None. Even the air vents were sealed with industrial-grade steel. "How is that possible?" an officer whispered. Cortez turned slowly toward the corridor, toward the place where Reeves had fallen, and on the wall above the dried smear of blood, illuminated by the emergency lights, someone had written a message using a piece of metal or concrete. "The dark doesn't hide secrets. It reveals them." Her pulse thundered in her ears. She didn't know what scared her more, the disappearance, the message, or the growing realization that someone inside Pelican Bay had engineered every second of this, and that it was only the beginning. Because when Cortez turned back toward the open cell where Garrett Price had vanished, she noticed something she had missed before. The mattress was sliced open, and inside the foam lay a sheet of paper folded into a perfect square. She unfolded it. A list of names. Officers. Inmates. Investigators. At the very bottom was a final line. "One of these men will die next, and you will choose who." Cortez felt her throat tighten. Something far more dangerous than a simple escape was happening inside Pelican Bay. Something orchestrated, precise, calculated, and she had just been pulled into the center of it. The list of names shook in Detective Marin Cortez's hand as alarms continued to echo through the concrete corridors of Pelican Bay. Officers sprinted in every direction, radios crackling with contradictory orders, but none of it mattered. Everything had already slipped out of their control. Someone had taken over the most secure unit in the most secure prison in California, and they were doing it from the shadows. Cortez folded the paper and slipped it into her jacket. The names weighed on her like bricks. Some belonged to officers she knew, officers she trusted. Others were violent offenders, men who had slit a throat for a cigarette. But it was that last line that wouldn't leave her mind. "One of these men will die next, and you'll choose who." She didn't understand what that meant yet, but her instinct screamed that this wasn't a threat. It was a structure, a system, a game she had been unwillingly pulled into. And Adler, whoever he really was, had planned every move long before tonight. By 7:14 a.m., the SHU Command Center had become a war room. Maps, inmate files, and surveillance stills covered the walls. 7 officers stood guard, each one jittery, each one armed. Warden Hayes, a rigid man with a reputation for zero tolerance, slammed a stack of papers on the table. "This is an organized attack," he barked. "We lock this place down. We search every cell. Tear them apart if we have to." Cortez stepped forward. "With respect, that's exactly what someone wants us to do." Hayes glared. "Detective, my officer is in critical condition, and 2 inmates have vanished. Are you suggesting we do nothing?" "No. I'm suggesting we stop reacting and start understanding." Cortez gestured the map on the wall, a digital layout of the SHU, color-coded and blinking with motion sensors. "Adler didn't escape," she said. "He was taken." Officers exchanged nervous glances. Hayes scoffed. "By who?" You think there's an underground railroad inside my prison. I think someone with clearance and knowledge of this place's blind spots is involved. She pointed to 3 sections flashing yellow on the map. These sensors went down in sync. Only one person knew about the maintenance loophole in this corridor. Hayes's jaw tightened. Who? Officer Reeves. Silence chilled the room. Ma'am, an officer said carefully, Reeves was attacked. You saw the blood. I also saw his face, Cortez said. He wasn't just afraid. He was shocked, like he recognized whoever hit him. She paused. And yet, he told me it wasn't Adler. The room grew colder. Hayes rubbed his temples. So what are you saying? Reeves is corrupt? That he's involved? I'm saying he might have been the first loose end someone tried to tie up. A radio buzzed. Warden, we have movement on C-Wing Corridor 2. You want to see this? Hayes and Cortez exchanged a look before heading out. The screens above the corridor displayed grainy surveillance footage of the hallway, where Adler had vanished. Officers leaned close as the timestamp replayed the seconds before the lights went out. Freeze it, Cortez said. The screen stopped on frame 4 hours, 39 minutes, and 17 seconds. There, faint, almost invisible, a shadow moved across the far wall. Not walking, not running, sliding, as if pulled by something just outside the camera's field. Enhance that, Hayes ordered. The technician zoomed in, adjusting contrast until a blurred silhouette emerged. It wasn't Adler. Too tall, too wide. The shoulders, the stance, they belonged to someone trained. Someone confident. Someone who knew exactly where the cameras couldn't see. Cortez's stomach tightened. Who else had access to this wing at that time? The technician scrolled through logs. 2 officers, he said. Reeves and Officer Markel. Cortez felt a punch of cold in her chest. Markel was a veteran CO. Clean record. No debts. No red flags. The kind of man who always had a cup of black coffee and a steady hand at roll call. She hadn't seen him since the lockdown started. Where's Markel now? She asked. Not accounted for, the technician said quietly. Hayes slammed his fist down. Find him. The team scattered, radios lighting up with frantic calls. Cortez stared at the frozen image on the monitor, a broad-shouldered figure, gliding toward Adler's cell. This wasn't escape. It was a retrieval. While officers swept the SHU, Cortez slipped away and headed down a staff-only hallway toward the administrative wing. She needed quiet, space to think. Patterns were forming, but one piece was missing. She pulled the list of names from her jacket and unfolded it again. There were 27 names. No order, no numbering, just a long, unsettling list. Her eyes traced each one slowly until she noticed something she hadn't before. Next to the 14th name, Garrett Price, the ink was darker, fresher, as if it had been added last. Price was the inmate whose cell had been found empty, and above his name, 3 rows up, was the name Reeves. Someone had marked their targets in real time. She needed to find a connection. She headed to the inmate archives, a dim room filled with metal cabinets and old files. Pulling open the drawer labeled P, she dug through Garrett Price's thick folder. Gang affiliations, assaults, 2 attempted escapes. But then she found something odd. A transfer order filed 6 months earlier. Destination, Pelican Bay SHU. Requested by Officer Markel. Why would a rank-and-file officer request a transfer? That wasn't protocol. She flipped to the next section. A disciplinary report from another prison. The report had been signed by Markel as well. Her pulse quickened. Markel wasn't just assigned to Price. He was tied to him. Why? Before she could dig deeper, the facility lights flickered again. A voice crackled through the PA system. Detective Cortez, report to SHU security immediately. We have another situation. She sprinted down the corridor, her boots echoing off the walls. When she reached the SHU, Hayes stood rigid, face ashen. What now? Cortez demanded. Hayes pointed to cell 194. The slit in the cell door was open, and on the floor lay a thin sheet of folded paper, identical to the one she had found in Price's mattress. Cortez's heart hammered as she opened it. This one held only a single name, Officer Markel. Beneath it, a sentence written in the same tight, controlled handwriting. You were supposed to find him first. She exhaled sharply. Someone was taunting her, leading her, forcing her to follow a trail at their pace. "Where's Markel?" she asked, voice low. Hayes swallowed hard. "We still can't locate him." Cortez stepped closer to the cell door and shined a flashlight inside. And there, on the far wall, another message had been scratched into the concrete. He opens the next door. You decide who stand behind it. A chill ran down her spine. The game was tightening. Whoever orchestrated this wasn't improvising. This was scripted, calculated. Every move meant to push the investigation, and Cortez herself, towards something inevitable. And then another officer rushed up, breathless. "Detective, there's something else." He handed her a sealed envelope found in the staff mail chute. Her name was written on the front. Inside was a photograph, taken from a security camera. Date stamped 3:17 a.m. It showed Officer Markel walking through a restricted corridor. Not alone. Walking beside him was Adler, alive, calm, and not restrained. Cortez's blood ran cold. The last line on the back of the photo made her throat tighten. "It's time you learn why he came here." Detective Marin Cortez stared at the photograph until her fingers went numb. Adler vanished from a sealed cell. Markel missing, and both of them captured calmly walking together, as if this entire nightmare was nothing more than a scheduled appointment. The timestamp on the photo didn't lie. Adler hadn't escaped Pelican Bay. He'd been escorted out, and Markel had helped him. Cortez folded the photo and slid it into her pocket as officers tightened the perimeter. The SHU felt colder than usual, its windowless corridors breathing with tension. The prison had become a maze of steel and secrets, and she was no closer to understanding the motive. But Adler's last message gnawed at her. "It's time you learn why he came here." Came here, not sent, not convicted. Came, voluntarily. Something inside her twisted. People didn't come to Pelican Bay by choice. Pelican Bay was a place you were buried while still alive. Unless this was an escape. It was an infiltration. At 9:02 a.m., Warden Hayes approached her with an expression she'd never seen on him. Fear barely masked by command. "We scanned every hall, every maintenance tunnel. Markel and Adler aren't anywhere inside the primary structure," he said. Cortez nodded slowly. "That means they're either dead or they're in the only place that isn't monitored." Hayes swallowed. The old disciplinary block. The abandoned wing. Shut down 12 years earlier after a structural collapse and a lawsuit. No cameras. No electricity. No guards. Just a locked steel door rusted from the ocean air. Cortez grabbed her flashlight. "Take me there." The air grew colder as Cortez and two officers descended the stairwell leading to the abandoned block. The walls here were different. Damper, darker, smelling of mold and salt. Water dripped rhythmically from overhead piping, echoing down the long, bleak hallway. The door to the defunct block stood at the end, heavy steel, scratched, paint peeling away, and it was open, just slightly. Hayes pushed it with the barrel of his rifle. The metal groaned, revealing a long row of empty cells stretching into an abyss of darkness. Cortez stepped inside. The flashlight beam wavered against the concrete. Old graffiti, handprints, and stale blood stains told a forgotten history. "This place shouldn't be accessible," Hayes muttered. "That's why he's here," Cortez said. The sound of something metallic clattering ahead made the officers freeze. Cortez raised her weapon. "Markel? Adler? Show yourselves." Her voice disappeared into the void. Then another sound, a faint tap. Then another, a pattern. Someone was tapping against a cell door. She followed the sound until she reached cell 8, where the tapping stopped abruptly. "Back up," she whispered to the officers. Cortez shined her light through the slit. Inside lay a man on the floor, hands bound with zip ties, blood trickling from his temple. Officer Markel. Alive. Barely. "Get bolt cutters," she ordered. As the officers freed him, Markel's eyes fluttered open. He stared at Cortez with a look of pure dread. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered hoarsely. "Markel, where's Adler?" she demanded. Markel's throat worked as he struggled to speak. "I didn't bring him here. He brought me." "Why? What does he want?" Markel shook his head violently. "You don't understand. He's not." His breath caught. "I thought I was helping him. I didn't know. His voice dissolved into panic. "Markel, look at me," Cortez said, kneeling beside him. "You gave him access. Why? What did he promise you?" Markel's pupils constricted. That he'd protect me. That he knew who wanted me dead. Cortez froze. "Who?" she asked. Markel opened his mouth. But before he could answer, a voice echoed from the far end of the cell block. Soft, calm, unsettlingly deliberate. "You're asking the wrong question, detective." Cortez stood abruptly, flashlight sweeping the hallway. Adler stepped into the beam of light, hands behind his back, expression serene. Feet bare, as if the cold concrete didn't exist beneath him. The officers raised their weapons instantly. "Don't," Adler murmured. "You'll hit him before you hit me." "Hands where I can see them," Cortez ordered. Adler slowly lifted them. They were empty, but his gaze, sharp, calculating, never left her. "You found a list," he said. "Good. That means we're finally at the part where I stop waiting." Cortez stepped forward. "Why are you here, Adler?" He tilted his head. "I've been here for 12 years. "No," she said. "You weren't assigned here. Someone put you inside the SHU with no history, no records, no background before 2003. You're not an inmate. You're a plant. For who?" A faint smile touched his lips. "For you." Cortez frowned. "For me? I don't even know you." "Yes, you do," he said. "You just don't remember." The officers stiffened. Cortez's breath hitched. "What are you talking about?" Adler stepped closer, slowly, carefully. "You're investigating attacks on officers, disappearances, secret messages," he said softly. "But all of this started long before today. 12 years ago, when you signed a report that condemned a man to permanent isolation." Cortez froze. That year, that case, the riots, the emergency transfers. But she had handled dozens of reports. Hundreds. "I sent many people to isolation," she said coldly. "You'll have to be more specific." Adler nodded. "You did." He raised his left hand and pointed toward the bound officer on the floor. "And one of them was him." Cortez turned sharply to Markel. Markel's eyes were brimming with terror. "Oh, God," he whispered. "Don't listen to him." Adler continued. "Markel wasn't just an officer. He was an informant. He fed intel to a gang that controlled half the drug traffic inside 3 prisons. His voice was steady, emotionless. And when the gang discovered he was a double agent, they put his name on a list. A list, just like the one Cortez had found. Markel begged for protection. Adler said, "You denied it." Cortez blinked. "I denied it because his story fell apart under questioning." "And yet," Adler replied, "the people who wanted him dead still want him dead." Cortez's stomach twisted. "This entire operation, this whole day was to get to Markel?" she asked. Adler shook his head softly. "No, this day was to get to you." The officers tightened their grips on their weapons. Cortez felt her pulse in her throat. "Why me?" Adler took a step closer. "Because someone inside this prison built a system where threats disappear, files are buried, and men like Markel are used and discarded. Someone who has been running this place from behind the walls for over a decade." His eyes locked onto hers. "And you just walked into his favorite hunting ground." A sudden metallic crash echoed from behind the officers. They spun around. The door they had entered through was now closing, slowly, deliberately. "Who's there?" Hayes yelled. Adler's voice remained calm. "He's here, watching, waiting." The steel door slammed shut with a deafening clang. Lights flickered, then went out. The entire block plunged into pitch black. Adler's voice whispered through the darkness. "Detective Cortez, you asked the wrong question." Footsteps echoed, fast, heavy, circling. Someone else was in the block. Someone who'd been orchestrating this long before Adler ever spoke. "Don't you want to know?" Adler's voice murmured. "Which name on the list belongs to him?" Cortez's breath caught as she realized. The mastermind was on the list. Someone she'd already seen. Someone she had unknowingly walked beside. Her flashlight flickered back on for a single second, just long enough to illuminate the final message scratched onto the wall behind Adler. "He's standing behind you." The flashlight died. A single gunshot echoed. A body fell. Silence swallowed the darkness. And the truth never made it out of Pelican Bay. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.